Beat it 18.
What is up, everyone? It is Andrew Pierre here of Beat It AT Production and Publishing, bringing you guys a new tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be showing you guys how to make a what was it? Oh yeah, Meek Mill and God, I just forgot that dude's name. Wow, that is embarrassing. I just forgot this guy's name. Ace Hood, Meek Mill and Ace Hood beat. So I've already made. Well, one of my coworkers, Tony, actually has already made this whole entire beat. Then I added some stuff and changed it up, did the mixing and some effects. I'm going to go ahead, play, we could do the full beat. And then we're going to probably break down up to verse 2 up here. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to try to break down everything as clear as possible. I will start up doing the tutorials about actually building the beat ground up. It's just that lately we've been getting good beats and such, and so I figured just to break them down for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go play this beat, and here we go. So that's the beat that we made. It's definitely that heavy orchestral craziness. Definitely that Meek Mill. Could even go Kevin Gates. Honestly, I could see Kevin Gates, Meek Mill, Montana 300, Ace Hood. Pretty much all of those rappers. Anyone that usually raps on those orchestral anthem beats. So yeah, it's kind of complex. It's not crazy. It's pretty crazy. I don't know. This is kind of how we have the mixer set up. Just a whole bunch different things, about 21 different things, and then I have a little side thing, the auxiliary track that I have something just riding right into it. But we're gonna go through and break down this intro. So the intro is I'm gonna mute these. Oh, I need to have those on. If I go over here and just mute them. So this is honestly all it is, with a little bit of this filter stuff. So this filter right here is just like the master mix. So if we go over here, I'm just gonna this right here, mix level, that's referring to this. So if that's all the way through, then that means that mix is going to go all the way through that. If it's down to 0, then it's not going to go through that effect. So if this was 0, then nothing would go through. If it was 100, then everything goes through. And so what we could see here is it kind of goes down. And then I pull this up and I create automation to the cutoff of the frequency knob. So cutoff frequency. So as this raises, the cutoff goes higher, which pretty much allows like all the sounds of the frequency range to pass through. So goes down, so it's like a low pass, and it's gonna come back up. So that's how that is. The piano 2 and brass are the same throughout the whole beat, as well as the space strings. But space strings were used somewhat throughout the beat, for the most part, mostly through the beat, as well as piano. The piano is like the main part of the melody, so we see the piano almost all the way through the whole beat. And then the brass, same thing. You see it a lot throughout the whole beat. So we're gonna go pull up the piano. Pull this over here. It's a Nexus piano FM piano. It has this pluck synth sound. Well, I'll play it out here once we're gonna click it right here. So that's kind of how we created the melody. It's just very basic, or how Tony created the melody. Not basic, but, and then I tossed on a delay, which kind of creates this bounce. If we turn off that delay, and I just toss on the delay just for more effect and sound. So now the brass. Where is he? So a little bit. It's a whole lot lower than the piano. So you get the piano at the higher frequency, with up in the D8 and around the 7th and 8th range. But then we have the brass all the way down in the 3 and 2 range. So it's really heavy, and these frequencies and sounds are not fighting each other. And that's important. If your sounds and frequencies are fighting each other, then they can sound all like combined, like just too much, like a whole lot of mush. So here's these space strings. If we were to go into our expansion, House Volume 1, lo-fi string pad too. That's what Tony used for this. And if we go and pull this up, did a little EQ, cut out a lot of that low end. And I also I did a little dip around this higher end, just because there's a lot of stuff going on up there. So we had the space strings come in halfway through that intro to kind of show that movement. Movement is really important when creating your professional beats. So up here now we have we implemented a pad, as well as I added these strings in here, and then we start having our drums coming in. So the bell comes in and hits at a D. So now the pad that Tony had playing through, Chillin' House Lounge of the Expansion House Volume 1. Now, what I added for these strings, I added Contact 5 and had my session strings. These are lovely. But, so I'm going to play what I had right here. Just no glissando, and just normal sustain. I made sure that these were more backgroundy, where you wouldn't really hear them so much. There's not really a lot of velocity change, as what you can see at the bottom, but it's kind of just pretty basic, where it's just gonna float through. So we got a G5 and a G3, but pretty much the same exact melody. These notes kind of just stretched longer. I just did that for whatever purpose. But so if we play, I'm gonna solo, not solo, but we're gonna play the instruments that we have. Oh, I should probably do this too. I'm gonna turn on this reverse. Now up here, Tony then added these bells, which were Nexus plucked hands up bells. He likes using Nexus a lot. I believe that's also the only. He has a couple of VSTs on his computer, but so we're gonna play. It's just it's a different melody. So all these melodies are different, but they all go together and they complement each other. We're using similar notes. So if we're gonna look, we got D, E, F, A. We're all on the same scale or similar scale. D, G, A, F, A sharp, D. So as you can see, as I point these things out, you can understand that the reason why everything sounds really fluid is because all of the instruments are on the same key. I see a lot of beats that amateur beats that people send me, and it's like, okay, you're not really implementing enough, or when you are implementing a lot, it's just they're fighting each other because you don't have things going at the same melody, or you're having sounds that are fighting over the same frequency, and so it just sounds blah. It just sounds too much. So I'm gonna look at this. Now this reverse bell was what I did, and I just been hearing a lot of these reverse bells. If you want to know a quick way to do it, all I did was duplicate, so clone, and then for this duplicated one I do reverse, and then honestly I just placed it in and try to make sure it would work. It's a little, as you can see, it's off, and that's just because this reverse isn't perfectly timed. So I had to figure out the right timing measure for when this comes through to hit. So don't hear it right now. So I'm gonna just So it's pretty smooth. When you have everything playing, you don't really notice any clicking. It's really subtle. So then, before I go on to this side, we have our claps. Since we're in the double time 150 BPM, which is very common, a lot of Meek Mill, a lot of those dun 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 dun, like all those like trappy yet orchestral beats tend to be around the 150 to 160 range lately, from what I've noticed. So now that's just BPM, doesn't really matter. Tony did these claps, which normally I don't do any envelope change, but it seems like he did that. And then he has another clap, which he stacked right here. So 2 claps, just very standard, but he's going to create a bounce with the snare. So the claps are not really, that's what we can see, it's just a standard dun, clap, dun, clap, dun, clap. Whereas over here with our snare, so if we play it, and then a little orchestral crash right there. And up here, Tony has these it's a very unique snare setup. I haven't seen this before, but what it pretty much is I'm gonna click it. These are lead-in snares, so I guess whenever it leads in. So those lead-in snares mark that transition kind of, as well as this little cymbal reverse that I added in right here. That has a little delay in there and a reverb, so it doesn't sound super robotic. And then so then coming into here, Tony added the hi-hats, which I'm gonna play. Nothing too trappy. It definitely has like that trap pattern, but it's not that drill where we have, but then Tony also added in these cymbals, which just seems to at the end, like almost at the end of every measure. And then I added in this little sweep down. This was actually from the Vec, man, what was it called? It's a EDM drum pack. So this isn't any of our sounds. I just use it as a subtle little transition sound. You can subtly hear it. Now looking into this 808, Tony did the envelope stuff. Like, is what my subscribers would know, or if you've seen our past videos lately, I've been doing the cut by self, but this envelope work where you pull down the delay, that will work as well. And what that pretty much does is when I hit, click, and let go, it's going to stop. Whereas what the cut by self would do is once the 808 hits and hits again, it's going to cut it, and it'll do it automatically. It's a little bit different, but very similar effect. When I tossed in the 808, I didn't do any distortion or anything. I just did the EQ and boosting the low ends, cutting the high ends. So nothing too new or drastic about that. Some lead-in snare. You can definitely hear that as sound now. So I marked where everything. So intro, chorus, now verse. So in our verse, obviously we're gonna cut some of our instrumentation because we're trying to create that flow. We're trying to create a rhythm, movement, not rhythm, but well, that too, but trying to create movement. Then we also dropped the 808s right here, cymbals, and the hi-hats. So now we only got our kicks, which I forgot to cover, but so nothing too crazy. You just stack the kicks so you get a little bit more punchy kicks. So then we drop the pad, and we're keeping the piano, but we're bringing in this space string, which we've had before. So, and we're also dropping the brass, showing that movement, keeping the 808s, but we're gonna drop the claps right up here. Drop. Little transition. This is not the chorus. So then this chorus is the same as the last chorus, so I'm not going to cover it. So there's nothing too much. We created these cuts in the instrumentation because it kind of sustains. If you cut and break off instruments, it has this sustainability almost, where it is, when it drops, it's going to have that impact, that pow. So we're going to go over up to verse 2 now. Now we in verse 1 I didn't do any automation or anything, just kind of left that pretty basic. But up here I did a little automation with a love filter over our master, which you'll see right up here. And I automated the X as well as the master. So this would be the master mix of this. And what I mean by that is, as what I said earlier, if this is at 0, then this effect will not turn on. But if this mix is all the way up at 100, then the effect will turn on. But I'll come to that once we get to there. Now, between verse 2 and verse 1, it seems like the only difference in this little 2 segment area, these 4 bars, was that we had this orchestral crash, whereas past we didn't over there. As well as we have the strings up here. So we're showing movement and we're creating variation through this beat. So then we're going to drop some more stuff up here. Now we got those 808s. You can see this little effect come down. Now it's like a low pass, and it's going to come up. And this is a little bit different than the filter that we had up here. This is with the love filter, so we get a little bit different harmonics with the filtering, and it's a self-oscillating low pass, but I did the modulation through the X, and so what this is going to do is modulate this, you see, and it will create different sounds. You could even do Y. All I need to do is create automation clip, and this is on FL Studio 12, and you can do this with, I believe, any FL Studio. And so it's gonna come up, gonna go fade down, gonna stay here, that low pass where you only hear that 808. So then it's gonna come back up. So I'm gonna show you guys. See, automated, so it's automatic. It's gonna sit there. So then what I did was went ahead and added these hits. Now originally the hits were only in chorus 2, which in chorus 3, but they were not in chorus 1, and I forgot to mention that. My apologies. Kind of rushing. There's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. But in this hit, it's just D, A, F, D, A, F, and it's just with stacked lower D. But this lower D is actually louder than the high D. So if we play it. So we play it. Then I kept the hits going in this little bridge. Or no, not the bridge, but and one thing I would like to point out was that you see snare 1 and snare 2. The only difference between these are the ending segment switches. But I cut it out at a lot of different segments. So if it's up in the chorus, then I cut it out because we get those lead snares, and I don't want 2 snares fighting at different at different rhythms and at different times. It just wouldn't make sense. It just sound like blah. So up here at segments where we don't get that lead snare, I did my little thing with changing the velocity up and such. So now let me double check through here. And then, as I mentioned before, cutting off your instruments will create that sustainability, that sustain, and then drops. So if we're gonna look back, that sweep down. It sounds like there's a whole lot more going on, but there's really not. And that's the thing, finding all the sounds and instruments that complement each other, which will then bring you that bigger, fuller sound. So I'm going to look through real quick. And that's pretty much all that we had. The outro was nothing that special. It's around like a little bit more than 70 bars for the total song, so that's pretty normal. It's a decently long song, under 4 minutes. So I mean, there you can see all the instruments that we have. Some of these I believe most of these drums were used out of our drum kit off of beatat.com. So if you want to get your own drum kit and use the same sounds, then go to beatat.com and you can learn more about that. Now through the mixing, all I did in here was mix it, and I mastered it later. I will probably upload the beat later, but this isn't a mastered product. But we're gonna look through. I don't mind showing you guys some of the little effects that we use. Parametric EQ, a lot of EQ, some reverb, some delay on that piano. That's what I said. Parametric EQ, nothing. Could have probably done EQ there, but parametric EQ, a little reverb. These are with the claps now. I didn't do, which meant to lower that a little bit more. But yeah, all these claps have a little bit reverb, but there's not like a lot coming out. And the reverb is to add that room, that pseudo room, because ultimately reverb is just the sound, for how long the sound to travel from point A to point beat, like this hitting the wall and such. The echoey sound. Snare 1, which was a snare, that rhythm snare, and then we had the lead snare, which was a transition snare. Hi-hats, just the hi-hats. A bell is just the bell, and a little delay in reverb. I should probably knock that reverb below the EQ, but whatever. Orchestral crash, you hear that at a couple segments, like right here and right here. Oh wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Orchestral crash, right? So right here, right there. So orchestral crash is just the orchestral crash, and then cymbal, not too much. You barely hear, and it's barely throughout. Strings too were the strings that I added, and so I pulled it down. I didn't want it to be too audible, and then I did a little reverb, parametric EQ, and then the stereo enhancer. I highly suggest not doing the reverb first. That was just pure laziness on my end. But parametric EQ for the hits, a little sweep down, EQ, reverb, delay, and then yeah, this is just other stuff that doesn't matter. Now, what I was talking about earlier about this delay radio string thing, all it is a string that I click this, then if I pull this up, then it allows me to adjust the mixer and how much this will transfer over to here. So, and then I tune this down. So if I pull it up and play it, kind of what it does. It's very subtle. You barely hear it. So if I raised it, it's just a delay, and then like just a radio effect or telephone effect, but nothing really noticeable. It's just more for texture purposes and making the sound a little bit more complex, harder to replicate. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much most of the beat. You only got one reverse cymbal, which is right up here. So it's a complex beat, but it's not too complex. It's just finding those right sounds. So show you guys one more time. We got the hit, that boom, and then the strings. String 2 was the strings that I added that were more in the background. Bells, which kind of were a counter melody that came in at different periods. There's a little bit variation between this verse and this verse over here. So if we look, oh whoops, that's because I have this, but you barely notice because we got that filter. So if we come up here, so there's that bell, the space strings, which I've already covered, a lot of nexus. Then this was kind of a pad. Let me pull this up. Just more for upper harmonic sounds, and I did a lot of EQ for that. I forgot to mention about this. The pad isn't anything crazy. This is all the pad is. So, and then the piano, you guys already know. Brass, it's just Hollywood brass, classical, from Nexus. So a lot of Nexus and a little bit of Contact, and yeah, that's really it. I mean, so anyone that has Nexus could pretty much go ahead and make this beat if you guys have the sound packs. So this is Andrew Pierre here. I do apologize about not doing a lot of the beats, about like building the beats up and then like doing the tutorials. I don't really like, because this is more showing off the beat, and I don't mean to do that. I'm trying to break this down and show you guys how to replicate or create your own style of this, whatever you want to call it, orchestral trap or anthem trap music. So, the style that's really common with Meek Mill and kind of like that genre of rappers. So, hopefully you guys found this somewhat beneficial and can learn from it. This is Andrew Pierre here of Beat-AT Production. Be sure to go check out our website, beatat.com, and go check out our Udemy course, which will have more information in the description. This is Andrew Pierre here, and I'll see you guys later.